In this video, I'm going to walk you through a simple yet incredibly effective series of business, marketing, and strategic planning exercises that I do each and every single month. These are some of the absolute best and most effective strategies learned from the top billionaires as well as the world's top entrepreneurs about how to run, how to grow, how to build a successful business, as well as how to lead a relatively successful life along the way. Because yeah, I guess that's important. The point is, if you go through these exercises, if you take the time to actually put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, pause the video as I mention it, and make sure to complete the exercises, you will have a significantly better year next year than you did this year. And it all starts with something called the 5-25 rule. Now, I first heard about the 5-25 rule in a famous story about Warren Buffett when he was talking to his pilot, Mike Flint. Anyway, Mike Flint was Warren Buffett's personal pilot, and one day Warren Buffett asked Mike Flint, "Hey, what are your top 25 career goals? Go ahead and write them down for me." So Mike Flint did what Mike Flint does, and he wrote down his top 25 career goals. I have no idea if that's what Mike Flint does. And once he had these 25 career goals written down, well, Warren Buffett asked him to circle his top 5 goals. So at this point, Mike Flint now has 2 separate lists, essentially. He's got his top 5 goals, and then he's got a list of 20 other things that he would also like to accomplish. So Buffett asked him, well, what are you gonna do with your top 5? And of course, Mike Flint said, well, hey, I'm gonna work on these first. These are the most important. And then Buffett said, well, what are you gonna do with the other 20? To which Mike Flint said, well, I'm gonna work on them when I can. They're not the main priority, but they're also gonna be there for when I've got some downtime or something to work on. And this is where things get interesting. You see, it's at this point that Buffett said, no, Mike, you've got it all wrong. All of these things that weren't on your top 5 list, all of these other 20 items, these just became your avoid at all cost lists. Basically, no matter what happens, none of these get any of your attention until you've accomplished all of the items on your top 5. Now, when I first heard this story, I was a little bit taken aback. After all, as somebody with a ton of different passions and interests and things that I'm curious about and things that I want to do and I want to accomplish in that, I felt a little bit restrained and a little bit restricted by having to stick to just 5 things. But that's because I missed an incredibly important part of this story, which is that you can work on those other 20 things after you've accomplished your top 5. Essentially, what Buffett is saying here is later, just not now. And this is because not only did Buffett understand the importance of focus and prioritization and things like that, but there's actually a psychological phenomenon that happens, and psychologists call this goal competition, where essentially you've got too many different goals and they start competing against each other for your time and your energy and your limited resources. This is why whenever you have a new goal or another interest or another passion or something else that you want to do, it's going to pull attention and time and energy and all of that away from things that you may be better off working towards. So at this point, I'd like to encourage you to maybe pause this video really quickly and write down the top 10, 15, 20, 25 things that you want to accomplish over the next year. Really just write down every single thing that's important to you, and then circle those top 5 things, the things that would really move your business, your life in the right direction, the things that you really, really want to accomplish. All right, once you've got that done, let's move on to the next point, which is all about understanding goals versus systems. Now, the first thing that I need to share with you here is the difference between an outcome goal and a process goal. An outcome goal is something that you accomplish at the very end. So I want to earn $1 million. I want to run a marathon. I want to travel the world. Anything like that. Anything that is outcome based. These are important to have, but the problem is, especially if you tend to fall more in the type A personality overachiever thing, is that the second that you accomplish that goal, you quickly forget about it and you go on to chase the next goal or the next thing, and you forget about everything and all of the hard work you did to get up to that point. And all of the hard work and all of the stuff you did to get up to that point, that's where the real money lies. This is because accomplishing a single goal is fantastic, but accomplishing a series of goals or becoming the kind of person that is able to consistently accomplish goals, that is where the real power is. And that's going to be where you're going to be able to accomplish all kinds of things in your life ongoing, not just now, but forever. And for that to happen, you need process goals, which means you need to focus on the systems, on the actions, on the activities, on the small, almost micro details that lead you towards that outcome goal. Now I appreciate the word systems is not exactly the sexiest word in all of business and marketing and success and things like that, but it is where success is going to lie. So for example, let's say you have a goal to get in shape or to lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds or gain 10 pounds or 20 pounds. Well, that's an outcome-based goal. Whereas what you really want and what you really need is a system-based goal, a process-based goal, something that's going to help you get to that point. For example, your system in this case could be to work out every single day at 8 a.m. for 20 minutes. The beauty of this is that you have control over that aspect. There's a ton of different things that could affect your ability to either gain this thing or lose that thing or accomplish this or whatever it is, extenuating circumstances beyond your control. Whereas anything that you can do personally, anything you can take direct and immediate action for, those are great processes to have because they're going to lead you in the right direction. Another example, an outcome-based goal could be to write a best-selling book. Now, writing a book is within your control, but the bestsellers part, well, that's going to be relevant and sort of applicable to a couple different factors, including supply and demand and the marketing and the messaging and the timing and all kinds of other factors that you can plan for but aren't guaranteed. Not to mention the whole writing a book thing. It's a pretty big deal. So this is where you want to have a system-based goal or a process-based goal, like every day at 11 a.m. I'm going to sit down and write 500 words. Again, this is something you have complete control over and will have basically no other conclusion, no other logical outcome than to lead you in the path that you want to go. Of course, even with your systems, even with your processes, you want to take that main outcome goal and then break it down into more bite-sized or manageable or at least mentally accessible tasks or milestones or kind of keystones along the way. For example, if your goal, let's use the book one again. Your goal at the end of the year is to write a book. Well, let's say it's going to have 12 chapters. Each one's going to have, I don't know, let's say 5,000 words. Well, you could now break it down to writing, say, a chapter a month or writing 1,000 words a day or whatever it is. But by breaking it down and by putting it on your calendar, you make the odds of success 2 times, 3 times, possibly even 10 times more likely for you to actually achieve it. But of course, some of the tasks, some of the activities that you're going to do, they're going to be more important than others, which leads me to my next point, the 80-20 principle. Now, the 80-20 principle, or Paretos Principle, is probably one of my favorite business, life, even marketing hacks of all times. Essentially, if you're not already familiar with the Paretos Principle or the 80-20 rule, it's that 20% of your efforts are going to lead to 80% of your results. What this means is that it's your job, possibly your main and most important job, to find the 20% of things that you can work on, that you can influence, that you can impact, that are going to lead to 80% of your desired outcome. The reality is that not all tasks are created equal. Some are simply more important than others. For example, let's say you're a business owner who's trying to grow your business, and there's a long list of things you need to do, including accounting and bookkeeping and social media management and hiring and firing and all of the other things that go into a business. But some things are going to be more important. For example, let's say you take a look at all of your business activities and you determine that your highest leverage activities are doing sales calls or managing your team or possibly even creating content. Well, what this means is that if you really want to impact your growth, you want to achieve your goals and do them faster with less time and less money and less energy invested, you want to delegate or outsource or possibly even delete all of the other things that simply don't drive the business forward. Anyway, the beauty of the 80-20 rule of Paretos Principle is that it applies to pretty much everything, regardless of what we're talking about. For example, the busiest 20% of all roads, of all streets, get 80% of the traffic. The biggest 20% of all of the cities in the world hold about 80% of the world's population. And the biggest 20% of companies and of businesses, well, they do around 80% of all the sales and all the revenue. And the reverse of this is also true. 80% of the roads and all the streets out there only get 20% of the traffic. 80% of the cities only have around 20% of the world's population living in them. And 80% of all companies, well, they only do about 20% of all of the revenue, all of the sales. So when it comes to having your best year in business ever, what this means is that, at least statistically speaking, 80% of your activities, of your day-to-day doings, are only accounting for around 20% of your productive output. Ouch. Tough pill to swallow at first, I know, but the reality is that even as you become more effective, more productive, more efficient with what you're doing, well, this is still going to apply. There's always going to be room to grow and to improve and to sort of trim the fat, cut the fluff, make yourself that much more effective. And this leads me perfectly to my next point, which is all about finding the one thing. There was a book written quite a few years ago called The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Anyway, much like pretty much everything else I've been sharing with you in this video, the premise of this was to really drill down, really dial in those single things that were going to be the most impactful, the most effective, the most important for you to concentrate on. But of course, they took it a step further. Instead of the 5-25 rule or the 80-20 principle, they said you gotta pick one. Now, again, the first time I read this, I was taken aback and kind of freaked out a little bit. After all, there were so many things that I wanted to do. How was I going to be able to pick one? Fortunately, the book goes into a few more details on exactly how to do this, and the premise of it is this. You want to ask yourself this simple question: what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Now, the metaphor, the analogy they give in the book is kind of like the domino. What's the big domino that you can push that's going to start this chain of events and make everything downstream that much easier, or again, totally unnecessary because it'll be pretty much taken care of? For example, let's use the business owner analogy again, and let's say that the bulk of your time is on accounting, it's on bookkeeping, it's going through expenses and payroll and taxes and all kinds of stuff that keeps you up at night, it confuses you, and it makes your life just a total living nightmare. Well, that was my story, which is why outsourcing my bookkeeping and my accounting was probably the very first thing that I ever hired for in my business so long ago. The beauty is it immediately freed up hours from my weeks, hours from my months, possibly even days or weeks of saved time from my years. I think that made sense. Point is, it saved a lot of time. Not to mention it made all of my accounting, all of my bookkeeping, all of my everything to do with money in the business that much easier, and in many cases completely unnecessary because I no longer needed to handle it. Here's the deal. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a marketer, as a freelancer or content creator, whoever it is that you are right now, there's a lot of things that you probably want to do, want to have, want to see, want to accomplish. And that is awesome. But everything you say yes to means that you're going to naturally have to say no to something else. And it's very important to be strategic and to be accountable and to take ownership, write things, and not accidentally just sort of letting some things that aren't that important slip through the cracks and appear on your to-do list that really shouldn't be there in the first place. Now, of course, I am biased in this, but I strongly believe that with where business is going, where technology is going, where the future is guiding us right now, one of the strongest and most important skills you could ever hope to have is that of marketing, and specifically digital marketing. And this is why the next thing I really think you should do is check out the video I've got linked up right here on understanding digital marketing. So make sure to check that out now, and I'll see you in the next episode. All right, the next thing that'll really help you become a better digital marketer is to understand the differences between strategy and tactics and when to use them. Strategy is all the big picture stuff, and this is really where